morning. It's Algo Cowboy, and we are live. It is Monday, the 12th of February, and it is 8:30 EST. So now we begin the show. I'm going to go ahead and spread the link around a little bit. If you're watching live, please say hello over in the comments section. If you have charts that you want to see, even if you are not an Algo Factory member, we'll be happy to take a look at those with all time available. Okay. So good. Awesome. Let me see here. So a little bit of news we're going to start with this morning. Let me go ahead and move up to the screen. And by the way, we're jumping straight into the content. If you want to know more about us, you can stick around until the end of the show. We'll talk about it then, or simply zap the QR code in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and you will see who we are and what we do. To make it very brief, we help people learn how to trade, and we help people learn how to build trading methods, and we can even help them get on the road to programming those methods so they can trade while they are away from the computer. Have the method trade for them. Great. So more on the QR code, whatever, zap it. We'll talk about it later. We got some news here that I do want to hit, and the gorilla is, I believe he's on the phone with overseas right now. So he'll jump in if and when he can. One of the reasons that the Gorilla gets the information that he does is because he deals with people overseas, and that does have him show up to these sometimes a little bit late and sometimes not until the private show. All right. So he, this live lab that we do in the morning starting at 8:30 a.m., this is not part of what people are paying for. This is actually free to the public. So, so when he comes on here and does this, he's also kind of doing it out of the kindness of his heart. We're not being paid to do this, but anyway, the point here is that DCG is a leviathan in the business, right? So over the years, a lot of these kind of smaller companies that have popped up, their money, when like Digital Currency Group kind of sucked up a lot of these crypto companies, right? And they essentially ended up being custody of a massive amount of Bitcoin. And so DCG, being as powerful as they are, we're sort of, they're kind of like an obstacle that was getting in the way of legitimizing crypto, because people were talking about what you're seeing on the screen right now. So there's an initial lawsuit, right? And let me, where's my mouse? Here it is. I work with 3 screens, and they're all massive. One of them 75-inch, and sometimes the mouse just gets lost in them. It says here, an initial lawsuit accusing crypto firm DCG of cheating people out of $1 billion has been amplified by investors coming forward with losses tripling that. So now you're talking about people being cheated out of $3 billion. Now, I believe FTX was an $8 billion scandal, of which $4 billion was gotten back from Binance guy, CZ. So this is kind of on the same level monetarily, if this is in fact true, if this scam is real, which of course, you have a fraud case that was already in play for $1 million, and now New York expands fraud case against DCG Group to $3 billion. So one of my buddies who is pretty high up in New York, and when it comes to like New York finance, he's well connected. And he told me about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I'll never forget the conversation because I was driving around, and he was telling me how basically they need to get rid of DCG in order to legitimize cryptocurrency and start to institutionalize it. It seems as if they did not want to wait for that. It seems as if the institutionalization of Bitcoin has already happened, because now we have the approval of the ETFs. The blessing has already been in play. Now, what that tells me is there's a decent chance that DCG will either be taken down, or there will be some kind of agreement that, I don't know, depowers them or whatever. Somehow they will be neutralized, or they will be punished, or whatever they need to do to, let's just say, Bitcoin's image is pretty good. I know there's all this talk, oh, Bitcoin's used for crime and all this. And you got your I'm trying to think of a polite word for this. You have some less than intelligent leaders of our country who are saying, it's used for crime, it's used for this, it's used for that. It's like, no, actually, the US dollar is used for more crime by far. But whatever, right? It's all politics. So the point here is that there is that little bit of an image that is still out there, And the more this can get cleaned up, the better, right? And DCG having so much power is a bit of a problem, according to this guy that I was talking to, and that they need to take them down or something. And this looks like the or something, right? They've tripled the size of the fraud case for DCG. So, how does that matter when it comes to the price? How does that matter when it comes to cryptocurrency? Uh, that's a tough one because this could be seen in two different ways, right? It says here, let's kind of dig into what this says. It says, as stated in an initial $1 billion fraud suit against DCG, its defunct lending platform Genesis and Gemini Trusts. In October, the companies are accused of misleading investors and assuring them of the safety of their money, even as the company's managements were aware that doom fast approached them. The fraud case focused first on Gemini Earn investment program that Genesis and Gemini ran together, but after the lawsuit, James' office said many more investors raised complaints of being swindled by Genesis more directly. As many as 230,000 people lost as much as $3 billion, according to the Attorney General, spurring Friday's expansion of the lawsuit in the New York Supreme Court. The fraud and deceit were expansive. There's nothing new here, a DCG spokesperson said in an emailed statement, accusing the Attorney General of making a baseless complaint to seek more press attention. We will fight the claims aggressively and we will win. Okay, so you're seeing what could be a legit fraud case, or you're seeing what could be a hit, right? And a hatchet job on DCG, and it could be a little bit of both. So this is going to be interesting how it plays out. But the real question is going to be, is this going to be good for price or not? Because that's I know I hate to say this, but that's like what we care about. Like this New York Supreme Court or DCG, like, okay, whatever. Is how a number go up? That's really what's going to matter. I don't know if I don't want to go conspiratorial here. Like the result of that, though, it would not surprise me because that's $3 billion. That's like FTX level. And I think the result of that like case, I wouldn't surprise me if it occurred at like a key point, like let's just say Bitcoin was like super low and it was on a support and it was like maybe the halving was over and it was time for things to go up. Like maybe the suit would happen then and then price like explodes up, right? Or maybe it's at a high and we need to knock the price down a little bit. Well, maybe that's when the lawsuit ends. Like those are the kind of things that happen very, very commonly in this game. Like you'll see lawsuits or major events just so happen right as Bitcoin is like super weak or getting super strong, and it spurs the price. So, that's, if you ask me, that's like New York politics. But it is notable. It's like it's important to mention that, right? So now that we're talking about Bitcoin, let's take a look at the price. Okay. Now, Bitcoin has this range that we've been talking about since it's been around, more or less. I'd say this range was established about early December, let's just say December 11th. And it popped out and popped in and popped out. Now it's popped out pretty hard. So it may have ended in February, making it a 2-month range, right? December, January, February. And that means there's a lot of liquidity in this area. And I'm going to flash over right now to the Kingfisher. And if you look at the Kingfisher, you'll see that there's a lot of liquidity in this area. You've got 44,000 heavy liquidity, like 43.8 to 44 heavy liquidity, and then a lot even down into the 42s. So I'd say the heavy bit from 43.8 to 44, that, all of that's worth noting, right? So let me get rid of this consolidation, and we're just going to mark this liquidity from 43.8 to 44. So here we go. So it looks like there's just a lot of liquidity right at the top of this area. And let's refine this a little bit. Okay, so that's more or less 43.8. And I'm going to code this a different color so that we know we know what it is. Okay, rectangle. Code it orange. Code it yellow. Okay, so we have that liquidity there, and we have liquidity down into like 42.7 as well. So we want to also note that. I just wanted to separate that bit though, because that's some pretty thick liquidity. Obviously the concentration's to the higher end of that. So it would not surprise me. And look, those of you who are in the private group, You have we haven't talked about this necessarily specifically, but we did talk about, and this came from V the Gorilla, who his Bitcoin calls that are like say a week or two out, they're super accurate. We knew like for example, what the Gorilla said, however many weeks ago, as soon as this hit this ETF, let me bust out my arrows, right? Just so you can know how accurate the Gorilla is. So when the ETF popped up and then started popping back down, V said it was going to enter this area and it was going to consolidate for a bit and it wasn't going to go much farther below, right? A lot of people thought, oh, it's going to go down to 15,000, whatever, right? And I knew it was going to be a sell event, or at least I assumed it was going to be a sell the news event. And I was correct on the short term. I was correct, for it sold off from 10 January to 22 January. So you got about 2 weeks worth of sell off. It dropped from 50, or I should say 49,000 down to 38,000. So, I mean, that's pretty significant. That's, that's a good, not quite 25%, probably 20%. So, that's a big sell off, but it didn't go any lower. And of course, I had all my stuff out. I'm thinking, well, I could, reach down deeper and grab this, grab that. Gorilla said, nah, it's not going to do that. And he was right. It just popped right back in here and it went up. And he called that out before it even reached the bottom. So you understand, in the private group on Thursdays, we have what are called the drips. And the drips are via the Gorilla. As we talked about earlier, he is on overseas calls as we speak. He deals with a lot of large players. He does institutional trades for both crypto and gold. He has companies mainly established over in Dubai. He's got, I think he's got a few different jurisdictions where he's got domain. So he's a player, right? And so he let us know that the wisdom from the top, the wisdom from on high, said crypto would not get much below this area, and it surely didn't. And it popped right back up, and it made it again to 48,000 and retested this high. Now, last week I talked about this high being important. It could either reject or not, right? It could continue up. As of now, it probably will continue down in the near term because there's a lot of liquidity just sitting right there at 47,600, right? So this is like right next to where price is. I would expect 47.6 to be seen, and it's at 47.9 now. I mean, you're talking about just a hair below price. So, down to like here. So we're not talking about a huge dump right now, but there's a lot of liquidity right there, like a lot. So price will probably come down and grab this. The question is how soon will it happen? And I'm going to say very soon. And on top of that, what'll happen next? Will it pop back up and retest the high, right? Will it pop down and grab this liquidity down here? Will it retest the high and come back down? Or will it retest the high and come back up, right? So the way I roll is that if I am going to trade anything, I tend not to trade Bitcoin when it's bullish. Or I mean to say, I tend not to short Bitcoin when it's bullish, right? Bitcoin is known for punishing the shorts. It just does. The numbers are not that good shorting Bitcoin until a certain point. When there's a certain point, you can, I feel a little safer shorting Bitcoin, but when it's right there, it's just, there's a lot of losses on that. I needed to show a pretty strong rejection to be interested in doing that. And then my trade size is not quite as large in that case. I would be more willing to, let me take a quick look at liquidity here. Upside liquidity, there's not a whole lot until after, say, like 52, 53. So if price did break above this resistance, right, whether it's now or later, if the liquidity looked the same, I would definitely want to take long up to say 52, 53, right up in that area. I would be interested in doing that. I could short, and if I did short, I'm not going to right now. I'm not quite there yet. I need some things to happen in the algos. But if I did short, I'd be looking at a trade that looks like this. Maybe my stop would be pretty tight. I'd want to limit my losses, right? So I'd have a little bit tighter of a stop with a smaller trade. And then I've got, 3-to-1 here. So I could lose like, 2 trades and still be profitable, because it might pop up and grab liquidity on the top side. But as of right now, there's not a ton of liquidity to the top side. There's just a couple of like spikes up here, 48, 8, 49. So I probably would have my stop loss above those, like maybe in the $50,000 range. I would feel comfortable, say at like 50,500, maybe. Just based on liquidity alone, I might have to do some more like calculation for how I like my stop. But long story short, even that's a 2-to-1. that's healthy. But as I wouldn't be ready to take this trade just yet. I would need, like I said, some of the things to line up. And then as I did that, I would take another look at liquidity and I would go from there. All right, good. We got a handful of people watching. That's good. Please pop into the chat on YouTube, say hello, and don't forget to like and don't forget to subscribe. A high percentage of people who watch, they don't like and they don't subscribe. We go on every single day. We have a lot of value. So please do me a favor, like and subscribe. It helps out. All right, cool. So we're about halfway through the free show. We don't have any questions as of yet. So I'm going to roll over to Ethereum. Actually, you know what? Before we hit any more crypto, I do want to look at the SP 500 because, we're getting record highs right now. So I do want to take a look at the traditional finance, right? And I'm going to roll up to a higher time frame. I'm going to take a look at I want to look at the monthly. I want to get a real bird's eye view of this whole thing. So give me a second to what you're seeing on the screen right now is me testing a lot of stuff, right? So don't get all tripped out. What we do isn't as complex as this screen as this screen makes it look. That's just my measurements. New highs. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who holds a pretty large 401k. He's been earning steadily since we were in college together, and he's a high school buddy. And so, he's like, I told him, I said, look, this move down that I'm talking about, this one back in 22, I said, this move down was a massive opportunity for a lot of large players to reset, right? Like price is probably going to continue higher for at least the short term. We're in an election year. And if the Democrats have enough power to force finance to keep putting money in the game, that's just going to be another reason for price to continue up, right? But we actually have multiple reasons for the traditional finance to head up. And we've got, quite frankly, we have inflation. We have number go up. We have the anticipation of rate cuts later in the year. So a lot of people are anticipating a lot of things. I can also tell you there's a massive amount of other financial mechanisms that are going on that are keeping the price heading up. Okay. So, it's not going to surprise me. It doesn't surprise me we have new highs, and it's not going to surprise me if we get even newer, like bigger highs. So let me, but I remember he's like, dude, I told him, I said that pullback that happened was significant. Like that allowed a lot of the large players to really reset and reposition. He goes, but that was in 2022. I'm like, yeah, these cycles take years. Like, that's how that goes. I think a safe, I'm just going to go with Fibonacci extensions, right? Because we're talking about basically FOMO. When you look on a much higher time frame, this is a FOMO chart. This is actually parabolic pretty much. It's not quite parabolic, but it's parabolic. So I'm going to look at a Fibonacci extension. And by the way, if you want to know more about Fibonacci extensions, come over to algofactory.tech. It's an extremely easy instrument to use. Just everything we do is not that hard. It's this really like predicting prices, determining directions of markets. If you can predict the future to a statistical degree of probability, then you can make money in markets. And if you have some tools that help you measure how to trade that, you can make a lot of money in markets. And it's not that hard. I know I have trained people who have come from backgrounds that have nothing to do with finance. I've trained people of every walk of life. And hey, I personally was a mechanic. I'm not talking down on anybody. Like I've worked with my hands for years. I also have a diverse background and a degree in economics and all this and that and the other, but I've trained like everybody, construction workers, I've trained doctors, I've trained, it doesn't matter what you come from. This is all extremely within reach. And I do make it pretty simple for people. So please come to algofactory.tech, zap the QR code top right-hand side of the screen, and we can get you trained up. So again, using a Fibonacci extension tool, I'm looking at maybe, I'd say safely 5,500 is a pretty good target for S&P, provided that we don't get any market shocks, right? Provided that nothing bad happens. Be it I don't really think in terms of good and bad per se in markets, but nothing bearish. No shocks happen that crush the price down. I think 5,500 is super reasonable, for this year. And I think that if things really, I don't know that we're going to see 65, 60. Well, really the target would be technically 6,400 ish. I don't know that we're going to see that. yet. I think that what's going to happen towards the end of the year, I'm not going to say exactly when because the gorilla has given us some very strong clues as to when that's probably going to happen. What I'm talking about here are cuts, right? So rate cuts are on the horizon. And it just depends on what Jerome Powell he wants to do and whether or not there's enough pressure to actually push him to do cuts. And by the way, if you look at the history of rate cuts, they tend to push the market down. They don't always push the market down, but when the rate cuts happen in a certain way, you'll see traditional finance and everything else take a hit, right? But if the rate cuts happen in another way, kind of more slowly, not as strong, just a one cut and leave it alone for a few months, and when you sprinkle in the cuts a little bit, actually it doesn't hurt the market. But everybody thinks that interest rate cuts are going to like push the market up immediately. It's not how it works. And I've done this history. I've looked at the history of this. I've tested it for the live audience. Like if there's a series of cuts and they're relatively close to each other, the market tends to fall. And then when the cuts stop is when the market comes up. So don't think that cuts necessarily mean that we're going to see the market head up, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean anything. So that all that to say, there just is a bit of uncertainty in a way, but I do think in an election year, and look, the Democrats truly like there's not really two parties in this country. I don't want to shock you here and get all crazy, but there's just one party when it comes to Washington. Like 99% of your Republicans, they're just Democrats in other clothes, and they talk loud and they act like they're conservatives and they get that vote. But the reality is that it's just one party out there in Washington. And right now it's the Republicans' job to lose. That's like how the gorilla says it. And I completely agree. So I would say, now it might change. Of course, you never know whose job it is to lose and what part of the history, right? Because for a while the neocons win and whatever. That's neocons or Republicans. But the point here is that I think that right now the left still kind of controls a lot. Like the Democrats are still going to push money or force the finance world to put money into the market. The market is largely controlled from New York. New York is extremely Democrat. So I get the feeling that the Wall Street's going to have to force money into the market. I don't know that the Jamie Dimons and the Ray Dalios of the world are going to be able to change that, or the Jerome Powell's even. So I would expect this, but I don't know that I would expect this. 6,400 is lofty. That's lofty. And the last time price did that kind of a move let's see how long it took. From here to here. 2 years. 639 days. 21 months. 22. So almost 2 years it took. So if we're going to transpose that, well, maybe it's possible. So that would take us out to September. Wow, this would take us right out to the election. It would be a significant move up from here, though, because this trajectory is much stronger, right? So if you transpose this trajectory onto this, you can see that as of now, we should already be at 5,400, and we're not. We're well below that. We're at the midpoint of this move, right? So this move that happened that took 2 years starting in 2020, of course, you have COVID, you have trillions being printed, thrown into the economy. So it was a different world. But right now, it's not meeting trajectory. In fact, it is, let me see, this is about 60%. So it's about, 15%-ish, 20%-ish behind schedule. So they're going to actually have to really fire up the money printer, if you will, or whatever other mechanism they have. And by the way, let's make sure we have this proper. Even if it made it all the way, it would only make it up to 6,100. It wouldn't get all the way, right? So, we have to be careful with our kind of assumptions on this, right? But we are looking at, let's see. Yeah, that looks right. Yeah, a 1-to-1 would be all the way up to like 7,600. So this just doesn't look right to me. Something's not right about this. 1 to 0, 0 to 1. No, that's it. How is this not transposing properly? This is weird. I'll take another look at this. It seems like there's something funky going on with my fib tool. Am I on log or something? Auto. Okay. Was I on log? Oh, I see what's going on. Perfect. Okay, we're good to go. All right. Sorry about that. I tripped out for a second. But yeah, so I would definitely look at um I think 6,400 is like real or oh, yeah, so what happened here? What in the world just went on? I'm confused. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm not on log. On auto. Okay. This is legit. I said 64. I meant 5,400. So 5,400 is legit by the end of the year, I'd say, and even sooner than that. It could roll up there, but getting up to 6,300 is starting to get unrealistic. So sorry about that the last bit there where I was getting confused on my screen there. I think I was in logarithmic, which really shouldn't affect anything, but it just didn't look right. Okay, cool. So Algo Factory, top right hand side of the screen, zap that QR code. Come check us out. Like, subscribe. That helps us out. We do daily videos. I want to know from people in the comments section whether or not you want more charting videos for the daily videos. Obviously, the morning video that we do here for the free to the public is heavy on charting. So if people want to see charts, they could come in and ask for charts. That's just what it is. I rarely cover a lot of news in that. On the actual daily videos that I put out, I'm taking Sundays off a lot of the time, but it's more news heavy. So if people want to see more charts instead of news, just hit me up in the comment section. Even if you're watching this after the fact, leave a comment in there. That also helps our algos. And I'll see if we can accommodate. See, I want to do what people want to see. Now, I'm personally far more interested in charts than I am in news. That's just how I roll. But again, this is more. It's more about bringing people in, right? So if the news is what's going to bring people, and I can introduce everybody to the technical trading, then we can use the news to enhance the technical trading, kind of like we did this morning, where the DCG, that is something that might affect the charts, right? So I'm not anti-news, but I want to I want to hear what people are interested in seeing. Okay, so we're going to roll over to the private show. So I want to thank everybody for coming in and watching. And like I like to say at the end of the recorded versions of this, don't forget to trade your job, upgrade your life, and come see us over at algofactory.tech.